Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the We Are Change News Show, where we try to highlight the hypocrisy of both the left and right fascist libtards and highlight issues that actually matter and affect us. Where we're going to be talking about the separating of migrant children, really idiotic war spending, real human atrocities that the mainstream media does not want you to know about, and Donald Trump's White House deputy chief being connected with the NXIVM cult. And really a lot more. But before we start, I don't know if you've been noticing this, but there's a lot less of independent media out there, mainly because of the technocratic censorship that's happening, which of course makes it more difficult for people like me to economically sustain myself. And I'm definitely not going away anytime soon without a fight. And that's why this broadcast is sponsored by a product that I believe in and use, and that is Virtual Shield. And many people don't know this, but your computer actually has a number associated to it, just like a phone number, which of course third parties like government and corporations use to identify you and also censor you from seeing content online that they don't want you to see. And Virtual Shield actually scrambles that number, your IP address, also has the possibility to block off your computer's microphone and camera access, and can protect your identity, keep your data private, and unblock censorship. So if you're interested in that, check out virtualshield.com/W7, and if you use the promo code WeAreChange, you get 20% off your order, and there's also a 30-day free trial that you could try this out yourself. Now, obviously, the main story dominating the headlines today is the story about children being separated from their parents during their immigration process to this country. A controversy that originally started when old 2014 photos were released, showing the conditions that immigrants had to go through when entering the United States, which of course they tried to specifically put the blame on Donald Trump, even though he wasn't president when these photos were taken, and at the same time raised no moral crisis when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And not surprisingly, this topic is mainly being dominated by a lot of mentally handicapped people who are getting most of the attention, and a lot of fake news. Like we saw from Telemundo, cropping out and editing this photo of a staged protest as evidence of the atrocities of this immigration policy that the United States has, which Telemundo is actually standing behind and defending for some reason, even though it's a manufactured photo and a staged one meant to escalate this crisis. Of course, Drudge Report couldn't be outdone in their unfair reporting on this, as they highlighted a photo of children from Syria holding toy guns in order to represent the children that were separated away from their families during the immigration process, which again is really dishonest reporting and just fake news, which of course makes this more of a hyperbolic issue and also a divisive issue that makes people fight against each other. And hey, you know what could make the situation a lot worse? Dumb actors like Oscar-nominated actor Peter Fonda that tweeted that he, quote, wanted to rip Donald Trump's young son away from his mother and put him in a cage with pedos, publicly tweeting this on his Twitter account and then deleting it later. And yeah, this guy's a absolute vengeful idiot. And talking about idiots, of course, we have Ann Coulter, who was claiming that the Kryant immigrant children were child actors that were given scripted lines, while she was citing a New Yorker article that supposedly supported her claims about these latest videos coming out from the detention centers, which was actually an article from 2011, to where the original author of that piece came out and said that she misrepresented his writing. Now, it's not only just mentally handicapped people that are dominating the dialogue about this topic, but there's also a big layer of hypocrisy that does need to be addressed, since of course the Clintons originally passed the law that separated illegal aliens from children. Barack Obama and George W. Bush enforced it, and so did Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama actually advocated for separating migrants and families away from each other. Canada also had a very similar policy and has committed similar actions like the United States has, which of course we did an investigative report on that you could watch on this YouTube channel, and the link to the story will be in the description below when it comes to the Canadian immigration process. And earlier today, we heard, because of all this controversy, that Trump was looking to end this family separation policy and that he would shortly sign something preemptive on immigration, which just a few minutes ago he did, and just moments ago signed an executive order that will keep parents and kids together. Even though previously he argued he had no authority over this, before, I do have to say that this was a brilliant PR move by Donald Trump, and overall just the right thing to do. That's just my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comment section below. I'm definitely looking forward to the debate, which I will be engaging the first hour that this video is out. But now I want to get into another topic, and that is just how powerful selective outrage actually is when it comes to specific issues and policy changes that we have seen the mainstream media effectively manipulate in order to push a certain agenda. This is a very important case to understand how powerful the media is, and I say selective not only because of the double standards and hypocrisy surrounding this entire case, but because I believe that there are other issues that are just as, if not more important than the previous case that we dealt with. Like the fact that 200,000 children are incarcerated annually in the United States. The United States, with their aggressive foreign policy, have killed unknown numbers of children all around the world with their drone strikes. And even though this issue may highlight how hyperbolic, idiotic, and just plain dumb the people who dominate the dialogue around these important subjects are, I think we have to understand, even though the left and right fight amongst these issues, there's more important issues that the left and right, Republicans and Democrats, actually do agree on, which are more important and have a bigger effect on people. Just like the fact that this past Monday, the U.S. Senate almost unanimously voted for and passed a bill that would authorize more military spending with barely any media attention on it. Even though the left likes to characterize Donald Trump as an authoritarian fascist who is a reckless madman, they still authorize him to have more weapons, bombs, and domestic spying power, to the level now where he's actually starting an official space force. And say you're one of these people who only cares about a specific group of children that fit your political agenda and not other children that are getting maimed and murdered like in Yemen. Say you're one of those hypocrites, it still has to be understood that this is ultimately indebting and bankrupting our country, while, most importantly, causing more human suffering all around the world, especially other children. And already in the United States, more than half of your taxes go to the military, which of course does not include the secret black budgets or the other budgets that this country has to go into debt to pay for, which is far bigger than just the money collected from taxes, which even Russia, as a perfect historical example of how this could go wrong, especially under the USSR, when they bankrupted their country and became a failed state because of massive military spending, is even warning the United States that militarization of space is a way to disaster. If you look at the raw numbers here, Donald Trump's military drops a bomb every 12 minutes, which of course has been affecting more civilian populations than his previous predecessor who ramped up the program before him. And no one's talking about these children that are being hurt. And especially there's no talk about the US's ally, Israel, that just launched airstrikes in Gaza in a response to, quote, burning kites. And I have to say, there's just a little bit of a disadvantage here. And these pointless wars and attacks that have been proven to create more terrorism are only going to continue and expand, with even the U.S. commander coming out yesterday and saying that we cannot pull out of Afghanistan, even though it is one of the longest wars in U.S. history that has been raging on for 17 years, which looks like it will never end. And hey, if we're going to do all that, we might as well pull out of the UN Human Rights Council, which actually happened yesterday, as Nikki Haley, Donald Trump's UN ambassador, officially called the council a cesspool because of their bias against Israel. Even though the UN is mainly just a useless organization, this move is still very symbolic, as the United States continues with its allies to pound and destroy Yemen, along with Saudi Arabia, that also has a great human rights record, creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now, which people are describing as, quote, genocide, which it is. And what do you expect, since a new research study came out and said that more psychopaths live in Washington, D.C. than in any other place in the United States. Psychopaths that not only influence but control the U.S. mainstream media, selective outrage, and propaganda to divide and conquer human society, promoting hyperbolic content so people fight each other and don't see the real problems that we are all facing. And now the last story that I want to cover today, which is very, very interesting, is that Donald Trump's White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Joe Hagin, just resigned yesterday. This is the man who led the U.S. advance team for President Donald Trump's summit with North Korea, which Donald Trump called a huge asset to his administration. But the resignation comes right before the following day, where it came out that Joe Hagan actually worked in Libya with key backers of the alleged sex cult NXIVM, a story which surprisingly was broken by BuzzFeed, but effectively connected the dots right before his resignation, which directly pins his firm, Hagan's Command Consulting, with a Libyan politician that were fighting to keep the NXIVM sex cult afloat, of course among the growing media scrutiny and legal troubles that they were facing. Now this was a very serious sex cult where their leader was arrested this June 12th, which of course was also connected to powerful Hollywood players and committed atrocious behaviors that are too barbaric to even describe in this broadcast, with of course their main accusation being of brainwashing women into becoming sex slaves. Now this is a very important news story that needs more investigation, since of course only BuzzFeed and the Daily Mail have covered this story, and this is definitely something to look out for. And it looks like his resignation is a direct response to this new information coming out. So of course we're going to be following this story very closely. So of course don't forget to stay tuned, click the notification and subscribe button for most likely absolutely no reason, since YouTube algorithm controls everything right now, and regardless of our subscribers decides who sees our content and doesn't, which if you've been following our broadcast and news reports, you can see why maybe they won't want to have people seeing this kind of information. But you are, so share this video with your friends and family members. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with us and being a part of real independent media. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.